Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining ADESA Group for our webinar series, SAP Options for Your Workforce Management. Today is SuccessFactors Employee Central Time Day. In a moment, we will be joined by today's speaker, Sven Ringling, but first I wanted to share a few things about our webinar. During the webinar, all attendee microphones are on mute. We will answer submitted questions at the end of the presentation, but if you have questions in the meantime, you may type them at any time in the questions box in the meeting control panel. You do not need to wait until the end to type your questions. If there is no time left to answer every question, we will reply to you via email. Also, this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be shared on our website at adesagroup.com within 2 business days after the webinar ends, and you will also receive a notification when it's available via email. In today's presentation, we will have a demo of SuccessFactors Employee Central Time. We'll get an overview of how the solution looks like and what are its capabilities. As I said, we are joined by Sven Ringling, our Managing Director for Germany and specialist in driving digital HR. He's been in SAP HR for more than 20 years and knows extensively SuccessFactors and how to transition to the cloud. Welcome, Sven, and thanks for joining. The stage is yours.
Hello, thank you very much for the introduction, Sylvia, and thank you everybody for joining our webinar. As Sylvia already said, I've been working in SAP's HR solution for quite a while and with SuccessFactors for about 5 years. And time and attendance has always been one of my, should I say, hobbies, passions, or nightmares, probably all of the above. So I want to share some thoughts about Employee Central Time and Attendance in this session, so you can see how it fits into the whole picture of the various time and attendance solutions that are relevant for SuccessFactors customers. I want to start with a general overview on a few slides, and then present a particular use case based on the most recent EU regulation, and on that basis show a live demo of timesheet and time off and time admin. Okay, let's get started. As Sylvia said, if you have questions as we go along, you can already submit them, and then Sylvia and Jose can have a look at them and either answer them immediately or pass on to me at the end of the session. So what does it mean if we say Employee Central Time and Attendance? It's basically made up of 4 main components. It's got the time off feature, which probably a lot of you have seen or are using if you're using Employee Central at all. Then it's got the time sheet, which is more than the name would suggest. It's for capturing times, but it also has a time evaluation calculation engine behind it. Then there's the time admin view, that time administrators can make changes and view alerts and so on. And then obviously there's some reporting to get the data around. At this stage, I think it's important to understand what really time and attendance can do, but also what it can't do. So we're not here to sell you something no matter what, but make sure that you understand the capabilities as well as the constraints and also the potential of the solution. So in a nutshell, a few things that are important to know. Employee Central Time and Attendance, as the name suggests, is included in your Employee Central subscription. So if you're already using SuccessFactors Employee Central, then every use case you find to apply time off, time sheet, or both is actually increasing the value you get out of your existing subscription without changing the subscription cost. Sounds good, right? You rarely get something for free from SAP. So it's also aiming at being a pragmatic solution that covers most scenarios, but probably never going to be as flexible to do everything you want with custom coding and so on as you can do it in a SAP HCM on-premise solution if you're used to that. Always keep in mind, it's meant to be pragmatic, probably covering all like low to medium complexity solutions, but not the most complex scenarios you can imagine. It's nicely mobile enabled. It's in my mind, and based on a lot of feedback, really user friendly and admin friendly, and it's innovating fast. There are always changes in every quarterly update, or as of next year, there will be more in every half-yearly update. But it's definitely not a full replacement for the on-premise time management. As I said earlier, there's always things you can do there that won't work in the same complexity in EC time and attendance. It's also, at least for now, not a full replacement of the CATS on-premise solution, the cross-application timesheet. It's not meant to be used for workforce planning, scheduling, as you would find it in the Kronos or workforce software solutions. And it's also definitely not difficult to understand for end users as opposed to some other solutions. So starting with the first component, time off. So time off, that's basically your leave management, absence management, leave request tool, whatever name you want to use for it. And it's very popular. It's used much more these days than the timesheet component. It's also often used as the so-called killer app to drive user adoption, because many organizations who want employees to get to use EC more, if they don't have a very advanced self-service empowerment culture yet, then leave requests or any kind of absence request is possibly the most popular self-service application they have. It's definitely a mature solution. It's got localizations for many countries. It can't be seen anymore as like any kind of pilot or early version. It's really mature. The number of countries you use because of the localizations obviously can drive up implementation costs, but that's the same for any absence management solution. When you come to local legislation, that's just increasing the effort of implementation. It's just a brief overview of the elements. There's probably nothing surprising. It just does what absence management solutions do. What's probably nice if you are used to this SAP On Premise solution is that it has a feature to support recurring absences, similar as you would like see it in Microsoft Outlook. And it's also able to deal with open-ended absences, so you don't have to invent an end date if you don't know yet when the end date is. Won't show a lot of screenshots because we are going to have a live demo later. But as the live demo, I'll focus on the browser version. But just want to share a couple of screenshots with you, one for time off and later one for timesheet. So you see the mobile version. It's quite slick. It's part of the normal SuccessFactors mobile app. And I think if I would be using it, I wouldn't using the browser version much. I would do everything on mobile. Yeah, going to timesheet. It's definitely, as I said, not used as much as time off yet. And it's also probably a longer innovation journey ahead. So there's more features that customers are still waiting for that are on the roadmap. So it's probably fair to say that the maturity level of timesheet is not yet as high as that of time off. Having said that, it has got a lot of features, and we will see that there are quite a few of good use cases. Again, it does what you would usually expect from a standard time capturing and time evaluation tool. What I'd like to point out is that the calculations are based on a generic rules framework. So again, if we compare with a SAP HCM on-premise time and attendance, where you have very specialized functions for all kind of calculations and communications, it's quite different here. It's very generic, therefore it's easier to learn. It's also more like aligned with the configuration in the rest of the SuccessFactors application. So somebody who has done other configuration in SuccessFactors or in EC in particular will not feel completely alien looking at the Employee Central Time and Attendance config. So I think that's an advantage if you are an admin and you have to manage various pieces of the solution, it's definitely easier to get into it. It's also based on the MDF, the metadata framework. A lot of SuccessFactors data structures are based on. Again, you will be familiar with that if you work in other modules, and it comes with the advantage that you actually have some good flexibility in defining what data is used in the rules and the workflows. You can actually add fields in some of the screens if needed. I think a positive surprise, again, compared to like old school solutions in the on-premise world, is that it's real time. So I remember some 20 years ago when we implemented SAP time management with customers, they said, well, that's even worse than Excel. And obviously, as a consultant, you are shocked. You're trying to make your customer love this expensive solution, and they say Excel is better. And the reason for this at first view was that in Excel, you capture a number and then the formula calculate the results immediately. And in the on-premise solutions, you capture your data, then you go to different transaction, you run the evaluation, then you go to different transaction again and look at the results. People have got used to this over time, but it's actually not terribly user-friendly. So as we will see later, if you look at the timesheet, as soon as we enter some new hours, the user can immediately see how this affects like their overtime level or their sum of working time hours. It's also really, it's mobile by nature. If you look at some of the traditional solutions, they all have mobile apps or mobile views, but you kind of see that it's never been designed with mobile in mind in the first place. The solution sits somewhere in some backend on some server, and then like an onion, there are layers around it, and one of those layers is trying to make it look nice and mobile. So I think that's a big difference in EC time and attendance, that the mobile solution really integrates very well. It's a very natural flow to use it. Well, as always, if there are positive surprises, life will usually have some not so great surprises for you in stock as well. So the biggest one at the moment, apologies for that. The biggest constraint at the moment is that there's no standard integration with time clocks and no integrated pair formation calculation, which is essential for actually using time clocks. So this is something that's going to change probably very soon, but for now, the time capturing either have to happen on mobile, on the browser version, or via upload from a third party. So there are organizations who use time clock and then use a custom upload to get the time pairs in, but it's not a standard solution yet. The same holds true for cross midnight shift. At the moment, the time capturing is basically based on days and weeks, and it's not easy to capture a shift from, say, 10 p.m. one day till 6 p.m. next day. You need to use some workaround. It's not terribly user-friendly. That again is expected to change together with the version when the time clock integration is coming. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the freedom to do the most complex calculations in the world is somewhat limited. Just think of it as a pragmatic solution that can do most things. But if you have the exception from the exception of the exception, and then this exception doesn't apply if there's a full moon and it's December and the user is older than 25 years and has blonde hair, that kind of stuff doesn't work here. Again, just a brief look at the mobile experience in timesheet. I think particularly for timesheet, if you're thinking about an increasingly mobile workforce or workforce that's working from home or working really from flexible workplaces, ever more people are going to be not in a place where you have time clocks anyway. So a good mobile solution that makes it easy to capture I am starting to work now, I'm leaving now, take a break now. I think that's very important to empower users to control their time capturing, not having to send emails or filling in any paper sheets anymore. Then have a brief look at the reporting side. At the moment, there are a number of standard template reports which can be used as they are or amended for the customer purposes in the online report designer, which you would be familiar with if you have been using Employee Central or maybe also from some other SuccessFactors modules. It's quite a nice overview, and as I said, you can copy them, you can amend them for your own purposes. Keep in mind, at the moment it's ORD, but this is at the moment just being migrated into the People Analytics Embedded Edition solution, which will also be available, included in your basic license for all customers. At the moment it's available in preview instances, but not yet in the production instances. So we are just in this transition period. But the ORD solution will also be available until such day that all the reports have been successfully migrated, so there's no rush in that. Then in terms of the People Analytics Advanced Edition, which kind of includes the former Workforce Analytics solution and will be rolled out through 2020. There are also time and attendance related metric packs. I don't want to bore you with a long list of metrics. They are available in the normal solution documentation. And as I said, the solution is innovating fast, so it's important to look ahead to see what are your plans, how's your roadmap, and how does this fit in, how does this solution fit into your strategy. It's constantly evolving, and particularly the biggest constraints I've been talking about, the time clock integration across midnight shifts, they are on the roadmap to be delivered quite soon. So this is something you would need to consider for your planning. And the other part is the metadata framework really does allow for a lot of flexibility. So if you say we need to capture project times and what the solution offers here is not enough, you would need 1 or 2 extra fields. That is actually something quite a few customers have already implemented with the MDF. I wouldn't recommend to try to copy the SAP On Premise cross-application timesheet CAT solution with it. If something that complex is really what you need, with 25 different columns of extra data you want to capture for your times, then EC timesheet, even with MDF extensions, is not your solution. But for a simple way of capturing a project ID and then maybe capturing an activity type, to export that data to whatever solution you're using in accounting or in billing, that's something that you could definitely achieve. Just looking at a few use cases, because the license is included in your EC license, it can be quite attractive to use it even if it's not covering your whole population. If you're thinking about using something like Kronos, which is a much more comprehensive solution, but I can tell you it doesn't come for free, then maybe you're considering to use that for, say, maybe your manufacturing workforce with a lot of complex shift patterns and complex rules. But then you may think about using time off and timesheet for parts of your population that have simple rules. Quite often that could be your mobile workforce, or maybe your whole office-based workforce, or you may even have a lot of employees those days who don't even capture time on a regular basis. And that's leading us to the question, will you even be able to do this going forward legally? Because the new EU regulations are actually discouraging you from basically just trusting everybody that they work the right hours, and ask your employees to trust you that you are paying them correctly. compliance and trust don't usually go together very well. So what does it mean, this EU regulation, which I think is a perfect use case for EC time attendance? Before this latest European Court ruling, you are probably familiar with the EU Working Time Directive if you are working in the EU or have subsidiaries in the EU and you've been dealing with time and attendance. There's some basic things apart from further details it's looking at. It's regulating the maximum average working time per week. It's regulating the maximum working time per day. It's regulating break times, and it's also regulating recovery times between the time you stop working today and then you start working again tomorrow. And it's always been an interesting question to ask, how do I actually monitor this if I don't capture when people are coming and leaving and taking breaks? It's basically just assuming that everybody is playing by the rules. And that's what now, based on a case raised actually in Spain, the European Court has kind of killed off with a recent ruling from May this year. I've got an excerpt of the the summary of the ruling. It's basically telling you that employers should have objective, reliable, and accessible systems to record the duration of working time. And further down, it also talks about knowing when, not only which number of hours has been worked, but also when they have been worked. I think it makes sense if you go back looking at these controls, things like breaks and most importantly, recovery time. For those rules, it's not good enough to know this person has worked 9 hours today and 10 hours yesterday, so it's all fine. It also needs to know how much time was in between. So what does it mean? So this is not directly addressing you as an organization, it's addressing EU member states. So at the moment, I think everybody is just expecting things to change, but in those member states who don't have this kind of national legislation yet, basically waiting for that to come out. So the details of the implementation will only be known if each of the member countries has translated this into detailed national legislation. But I think most experts who look at this ruling are in agreement that common practices like the so-called trust-based working time, where time is not tracked, or the so-called negative time recording, where if no time is recorded, the assumption is that it's just going according to the normal schedule, that these practices will no longer be possible. So if you have this kind of population, whether it's all your office-based workforce, whether it's everybody from team supervisor upwards, whether it's your service engineers or your mobile sales force, you are very likely to have to make some substantial changes there and put in a solution to monitor that time and be able to spot and respond to non-compliant events. And that's where I think Employee Central, EC, timesheet, and time off, it's almost designed for this kind of simple, pragmatic, but then accurate and compliant solution. And that's where I stop torturing you with slides and jump into the demo just in time before it locks itself off. So you should now see a SuccessFactors homepage screen. I am logged in via proxy for an employee called Thomas Adessa. And Thomas is an employee who used to be on trust-based time before they before the European Court ruling. Now he's been made to capture his times. He's not usually working somewhere where they have time clocks. He's working from home, he's working mobile, he's working in the office. So for him, this solution to capture it online with SuccessFactors with mobile or the browser version is perfect. So Thomas wants to do two things. Thomas wants to request a vacation for the Christmas week. And Thomas also has got a message from his line managers rejecting last week's timesheet because there was some times missing. Okay, so he will need to look into this. But first things first, vacation is important. So there are, as always, various ways to navigate in SuccessFactors. If you're familiar with the solution, this will be nothing new, but maybe there are some people in the audience who are not. So something like timesheet or time off that I use a lot, I would usually have as a tile on my homepage, where it's up to me what I want to have there. Where you see here, I have the timesheet, I have the time off. But personally, when I navigate in SuccessFactors, I'm almost always using the action search. It's a very good way to find what you need, even if you don't know where the tile is, where it's hidden in the menu, even if you don't know exactly how it's called, right? I don't need to know that the solution is called time off in SuccessFactors, or that the implementation team has decided to name it request vacation in the menu. My mind is on holiday, and Action Search actually knows that when I'm looking for a holiday, that probably means I want to request a vacation. So this is the basic time off screen in the browser version. It's a bit more space, so you have some more information than you would have on the mobile solution in one view. But basically, it gives you the usual calendar view. You can see where there already are vacations. The green ones are approved. There are no orange ones which would be pending. So that's already a good overview. I also have upcoming time off, so I see that the next one is this vacation early December, and then there are some public holidays. I also see my vacation days, which in this case are actually built to accrue over time. So as I said, Thomas really wants to take some time off in the Christmas week. So I could here pick from whatever absence types are available. In this case, we only have vacation and sick leave, but you could have bank time, time on you, or all kind of other leave leave quotas you could think of. And what did I say? I wanted in the Christmas week. So that's the 23rd of December to the 27th. You see this employee has like the US view where the week starts on the Sunday. That's something you can configure. It's very configurable. So you would usually for Europe probably configure it to start on a Monday for the week. But now something changed. Now here under team absences, it tells me 2 out of 4 team members are actually already on leave in at least part of this period. So rather than me just switching this, knowing that my boss will reject because then there will be nobody left, I get this warning, and I can actually check what's happening. So this is what I'm trying to request. And now I see that George is actually off on the Monday and the Tuesday, and Torsten is off the whole week. So he actually was beating me to this. So I try some damage limitation and say, okay, at least George will be available on the 27th. So let me just request time off on the 27th. So then this changes. It's only 1 out of 4 team members is already on leave. I could now add attachment. Doesn't make sense for normal leave, but say if I would request leave for a special occasion, maybe for a home removal, or a family member is sick or something, and HR requires documentation for that, then I could add the attachment. So I submit this. And now if I look at my balance, it's sitting on 12.25 days as of today. But if I want to see how much will I actually have left at the end of the year, I can also see that and see I'm below 10 days by the end of the year. Okay. So that's the request. The next step obviously would be that my boss would have to approve. So I'm quite confident they're going to do, because I already know that there are 2 other team members still on duty on that day. But before I switch to the line manager view, said Thomas has some other things to do. He has to look at last week's timesheet because his original submission has been rejected by his boss. So I'm looking at view my timesheet. And I go to last week. And well, it's not difficult to spot why it had been rejected, because here on the Friday I didn't even capture any data. So if I worked according to schedule on that Friday, it's quite easy. I just click on the standard work schedule time, and then it fills it accordingly. So standard working time starting 8, ending 5 p.m. with a 1 hour break from noon to 1 p.m. That's coming from my work schedule. That could be more complex if I wanted to. But that's for the user, it's quite convenient to start with that, and then if they did work maybe different times, they can amend on that basis. So for instance, I know that on that Friday I actually worked longer. I worked until 8 p.m. and on that occasion I see, because that's obviously overtime, that my overtime record here goes up immediately. The system also tells me that I have recorded on-call duty on a different day. So that's something you can do here on this view. There's also a way to add absence time out of the timesheet. If you're in timesheet anyway, then you might rather do that than go into the time off request. And there's also details button. So if I have extra fields, so in this case, I allow the employees to capture a cost center. If those hours need to be booked to a particular cost center, that's also possible. And as I mentioned earlier, if you would amend this via MDF to allow to assign like a project number, this is exactly where this would happen. This extra field, project assignment, or you ever call it, would pop up in that space. So what's happened now? If you think about the EU regulation, so I captured when am I starting my time, when did I stop working, where are my breaks? So that's kind of complies with that demand that employers need to be able to monitor whether employees stay within the rules. But obviously, I didn't stay within the rules, right? I worked 12 hours minus 1 hour break on the Friday. So that's definitely more than 10 hours. So I fall foul of this particular rule. Let me just look at my screen. Windows is playing games with me. I can't see the full screen. So that's better. There's one thing that you may or may not usually let your employees see, but for the admin who's testing the configuration, this is very useful. There's a thing called time collectors, which can be defined with the generic rules, and to monitor the rules of the EU regulation, we actually built a time collector that counts the number of days where an employee worked more than 10 hours. So this just happened on this Friday. So this counter goes up to 1. If I add time that goes beyond 10 hours on another day, say this one, I work 5 minutes over the limit, then the time collector should change on the fly immediately. See, now there are 2 hours. And it says this, the period it's counting for is the current month. It also counts the overtime, which is 5 hours and 20 minutes so far. So then this time collector is stored in the results, and again, then you can use this in your reporting. Maybe you can do a top 10 and see which employees seem to be under most pressure to work beyond 10 hours, and then have a conversation with them and their bosses how to avoid this in future. But also, most notably, you are compliant, you would be able to track, you are able to ask for reasons, document, and take measures to avoid it in future. So it's a simple solution, but as I said, somebody who's not captured time before would probably be happy to have a very simple solution which just does what it needs to do to comply with the regulations. So Thomas is happy with his timesheet now, hits submit, can add a comment here that might actually make sense because he's gone over 10 hours twice. Let's say IT issues had to work longer to fix. So always, IT is always a very good excuse for unexpected overtime hours. So these hours are now sent as a timesheet to the line manager. We will look at this in a minute, how his approval view looks like. But once they're approved, they can also go on. They can be integrated with your payroll solution, particularly if it's SAP Employee Central Payroll or SAP On Premise Payroll. Then you have your predefined interfaces or integrations you can use for this. If I'm looking at this and I realize 520 overtime, I thought I should have worked much more overtime. I've worked on Sunday, it's not counting. Then I realized, oh, I forgot to capture this Sunday. I could actually, because it's not been approved yet, I could actually still withdraw. So for the time being, it's safe. It's out of my line manager's inbox, and I can now add the extra hours I had worked on the Sunday. And then you see overtime going up immediately. In the real world, we would probably have more than one overtime pocket. We would probably have normal overtime that's paid, say, at 120% of the normal hourly rate. But then overtime on the Sunday, that might be a different wage type because it's paid at 150%, or overtime of more than 5 hours per week might get a different rate. So that's not difficult to do. These kind of calculations are easy with the generic rules. Then you can have them in special pockets for your reporting, and you can also assign them to special wage types to go into your payroll solution. But now I have to submit again, so it's actually going to my supervisor. Submit successful. So just enough time to have a quick look at the supervisor view. So I'm now going to proxy for a different person. Thomas' boss is called Uwe Radka. That's the one. So I'm now slipping in Uwe's shoes. And I should actually see the requests from Thomas in my open approval requests. There are two. That looks promising, right? And I have them both here. So I have the timesheet for that week, and then I have the request for vacation days on the 27th of December. So I could actually approve it right out of this view, maybe because this is all I need to know. Maybe I talked to Thomas already. I know this was coming. I no need to go into the detail. But well, I want to show you the detail, right? So let's go into it briefly. So there's a lot of detail. Again, it's configurable, what's shown there. What might be interesting for me are any comments, but Thomas hasn't submitted comments on the final submission. But maybe as a team leader, the most important part for me would also be the team calendar. So it tells me one other is absent. I can look at who is this, and then realize on that day is Torsten, but that's not a problem because I know George can cover for Thomas, and I'm ready to go. So this is a normal workflow, as you may be familiar with from other EC workflows. So you can add further approvers if you really want to have crazy processes. You can inform other people. You might want to send an information message to the next level manager, to a matrix manager, to somebody in HR. Obviously, the employee can be informed. That's just your usual workflows. And now the timesheet one, there's obviously a bit more information in there. Again, it's a lot of it is configurable. I've got all the details in there. So here I see what's actually been captured. So it's just the standard working time, the breaks, the on-call duty. It's oops, go away. Nothing surprising here. And I see this time evaluation result. Again, here I can define what's to be shown here. Here I have only the working time without break, and the planned hours and the breaks. But again, I could put the overtime in here or any other time. So I think the line manager should see. Interesting is this delegate button, right? I might be Thomas' line manager, but Thomas is currently working on a project, and I don't really have visibility of his work hours and whether this in line with the budget of the project and so on. So I might decide, rather than approve this myself, I delegate approval to a project manager. Obviously, this project manager would then need the respective permissions. But to keep it simple, I just approve now. So these 5 hours, 20 minutes overtime we have seen, they can now be pulled into payroll, or maybe they will be pulled into payroll the month end whenever your payday is, and you run the interface. So that's the main part. So we've seen a time off leave request. We have seen the timesheet for a simple scenario to capture coming, leaving, breaks, on-call duty times, possibly deviating cost centers and see the calculation for a simple overtime bucket and for the monitoring of the 10-hour rule. Usually you would have many more rules there. You could also create alerts if somebody is above the 10 hours so that there's an error message popping up, but just want to keep it simple to be able to stick to our time today. And just want to have a very brief look at the administrator view. So I stop proxying, becoming the admin user who has also the rights to do time admin for Thomas. Again, this is depends a lot on your process, what you want the time admin to see. But just to have a brief look, I can ask for administer time for Thomas Adessa. Here's the one. So the main standard elements you see here is the actual time records. When you need to go into details, probably more interesting the time accounts. You see, we are talking about the annual leave account here. We see the accrual, so this is set up to accrue a certain number of days every month or every day or every week, so it's going up over time. And then here we see how it's changing. So you see it's the monthly entitlement changes every month by 2.5 days, and then there can be manual adjustments. If somebody tells me this is wrong for some reason, I can adjust it manually here as well. And then we go to the future, we'll see the actual holidays taken. There could be account payouts which you can capture so that if somebody is leaving, they still have 6 days of holiday left. You could capture a payout. They would turn up here and go into your payroll interface. We can have a look at the actual work schedule, and it's actually quite easy to override the work schedule here. It's probably not as common with this type of employees, but if you are in a factory environment, then it's quite often that you need the temporary change. Somebody is jumping in for somebody else, and then you can pick a day and say, give me a different work schedule for that day, for that week, or just make one up on the go. On this day, is going to work from 5:30 till 2:30 p.m. That's very flexible. Then there are alerts. At this point, there are no alerts up. At this, I said working more than 10 hours or something like that could be an alert. So you get your error messages here. And here we see the time collectors, which I think is quite interesting. We can also filter to follow how one of them has been building up. And if you see the overtime, where there have been 60 minutes going on that day, then there are another 120 on that, so it's building up until the end of the month, when then the end of month processing in this case is just cutting it or paying it off, whatever your rules are, and then it starts again the next month, and that's the minutes we actually captured in that week just processed in the demo. There's a lot more you can do around this with the collectors, with the alerts and so on, but I've been told I have to stick to 45 minutes. I'm already 2 minutes over. So to avoid punishment by Sylvia,
I was about to jump in. Thank you, Sven.
I hand back to her at this point.
Great. Thanks a lot. And indeed, we would like to jump to the questions because, in fact, we have some pretty interesting questions.
Okay.
So let's go ahead. Thanks a lot for the great presentation. Let's move to my favorite slide, or question doc. So some of the very interesting questions that we received are, first one, Do we need Employee Central Payroll to use Employee Central Time?
Do you need Employee Central Payroll? It's a very nice payroll, right? But you don't need it to run EC Time. So EC Time can run completely on its own as a time solution. And I see where the question could be coming from, because I think the official word that's still used in various places is actually EC Payroll Timesheet. But that's because it can feed Employee Central Payroll, but doesn't have to. So you can use it standalone just to calculate your time with no connection to any payroll whatsoever. You can integrate it with EC Payroll. That's the easiest payroll to actually integrate it with, because they are brother and sister, right? You can integrate it with your SAP HCM on-premise payroll if you're in this so-called core hybrid scenario where you use Employee Central as core HR and maybe time, and then your on-premise solution for payroll. Then there's the standard packaged integration through the SAP Cloud integration you can use, and also amend their standards, but usually every customer has their own special pieces in the integration. But you can also, in the same way, you can use Employee Central together with any other payroll system. You can also feed those payroll systems out of Employee Central time and attendance. It's configurable every time type or you see, whether it's called overtime or normal working time or sickness. All those can be assigned to pay types or wage types that go through the interface into your payroll system, but they don't have to.
All right, thanks a lot. There is a second question that says, we have different overtime rates for different times. For example, weekdays, Saturdays, Sundays. Is this possible with EC Time?
Yes, we have the generic rule framework I mentioned, and that framework can test certain conditions. So there are some conditions that are kind of based on the group of the employee, if different employees have different contracts, but then it can also check, okay, is this overtime happening after 10 p.m. or is it happening on a Saturday? Is it happening on a public holiday? Or is it more than 4 hours for the whole week? All these kind of conditions where you can fill different buckets of overtime. So at the end of the day, then you would have one overall overtime number, say 10 hours, and that would be made up of, say, 6 hours overtime on a Saturday and 2 hours overtime between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 2 hours overtime after 10 p.m. And each of them can then eventually translate into different wage types when it goes to your payroll interface. And then payroll knows that some of them are to be paid at 100% and some of 120%, whatever your contractual rules are.
All right, I think that was very clear. Thanks a lot. And another one that will be the last one. Can we assign project times in the same way we do it in SAP CATS?
But as I mentioned earlier, in the same way would be pushing it. So you, as it comes out of the box, there's no field for project times. So you only can assign a cost center 2 hours. But then using the metadata framework extensions, there are customers, and I think there are even blogs on the SAP community network that describe how to do it, where you add an extra field with a pick list where you have a list of your projects you can assign to it, or you can add an activity type. So that's possible, but that's not the same as you have in CATS, right? CATS is very comprehensive. I've seen customers with more than 20 columns to add extra information. It completely integrates with the project management module of SAP On Premise, right? The PS module, where you have the project, the PSP elements, and the whole hierarchy. There's a limit that what you can reasonably do with this. So if you say we use CATS and we use it in its full complexity, no. But if you would be happy with a simpler solution, if all you need is a project number assigned to the hours so that you can export that and load it into your project calculation tool or maybe your billing tool, that's feasible as a custom extension.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. We don't have any more time to reply any other questions. Some of the audience was congratulating you for the super comprehensive presentation. So thanks a lot, Sven. And finally, as a wrap up, I would like to show you the schedule, the upcoming webinars. Last week, we did the demo on Kronos Dimensions. 7th, we did the introduction. We are still presenting next week SAP Fiori, so Fiori Solutions for On-Prem. The 5th of December, we will do a demo on Workforce Software. We will finalize this webinar series on the 12th with the conclusion. So we hope to see you at the upcoming webinars. As always, you can get in touch to me directly or to Jose Maria, and we will centralize your questions. Thank you very much, all of you. Have a nice day, and hope that we can see you at the next webinars.